The sun was just beginning to rise over the horizon when Captain James Walker and First Officer Thomas Green stepped into the cockpit of Flight 219, a commercial airliner bound for Sydney. Both experienced pilots, they shared a camaraderie forged through countless hours of flying together. The weather report predicted clear skies and a smooth journey, and the plane's systems showed no signs of trouble as they taxied onto the runway. As they climbed to cruising altitude, the two men settled into their routine, exchanging light-hearted banter while keeping an eye on the instruments. The passengers behind them were equally relaxed, enjoying their breakfasts and the in-flight entertainment. For the first 3 hours of the journey, everything went as planned. However, as the plane approached a stretch of open ocean, a sudden, jarring vibration rippled through the cabin. James and Thomas instinctively glanced at each other before turning their focus to the control panel, which was suddenly lit up with warning lights. "Engine 1's losing power," Thomas reported, his voice calm but tinged with urgency. James immediately took the controls, steadying the aircraft while Thomas began running through the emergency checklist. Moments later, the second engine began to sputter, and the plane's airspeed dropped alarmingly. James grabbed the intercom to address the passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're experiencing some technical difficulties, but please remain calm as we work to resolve the situation." In the cockpit, the tension was palpable. Both men worked in synchrony, their training kicking in as they communicated with air traffic control to declare an emergency. However, they were flying over a remote stretch of ocean, far from the nearest airport, and the options were limited. The plane began losing altitude rapidly. "We need a plan, now," Thomas said, scanning the radar. His eyes caught a faint outline on the navigation display, a small, uninhabited island about 30 miles away. "There," he said, pointing to the screen. "If we can make it, we might have a chance." James nodded, his hands steady on the controls as he adjusted their course. The minutes stretched into what felt like hours as they coaxed the crippled aircraft toward the island, all the while managing the plane's descent to avoid stalling. Meanwhile, Thomas prepared the passengers for an emergency landing, instructing the flight attendants to ensure everyone was secured in their seats. As the island came into view, it became clear that their situation was dire. The strip of land was narrow, bordered by rocky cliffs and dense jungle, with no sign of a flat area suitable for landing. "We're going to have to ditch in the water," James said, his voice grim. Thomas nodded, his face set with determination. Together, they guided the plane toward a stretch of calm sea near the island, aiming to minimize the impact. The final seconds were a blur of alarms, shouted commands, and the deafening roar of water as the plane struck the surface. The impact was jarring but controlled, and the fuselage remained intact as the aircraft floated briefly before beginning to take on water. James and Thomas worked quickly to oversee the evacuation, their voices cutting through the chaos as they directed passengers toward the emergency slides and rafts. Despite the fear and confusion, the crew and passengers moved with remarkable discipline, a testament to the emergency drills that had once seemed like mere formalities. Within minutes, everyone was in the rafts, bobbing on the waves as the plane sank below the surface. James and Thomas were the last to leave, ensuring that no one had been left behind. As they paddled toward the island, they took a moment to catch their breath and assess the situation. The passengers, though shaken, were alive, a fact that filled both men with a profound sense of relief. Reaching the island's shore, they helped everyone disembark from the rafts and began organizing the group. The island was dense with vegetation, and it quickly became apparent that they would need to rely on their resourcefulness to survive. James and Thomas took charge, delegating tasks and ensuring that the group remained calm and focused. They set up a temporary shelter using debris from the rafts and scavenged supplies from the emergency kits. While some passengers gathered firewood, others searched for fresh water and edible plants. Over the next few days, the group settled into a routine, their initial panic giving way to a sense of resilience and camaraderie. James and Thomas worked tirelessly, not only to ensure everyone's safety but also to boost morale, telling stories and encouraging the passengers to focus on the positives. Meanwhile, the outside world had taken notice of the missing flight. Rescue teams were dispatched, scouring the area for any sign of the aircraft. Using a makeshift signal fire and a mirror from one of the emergency kits, James and Thomas managed to attract the attention of a search plane after 5 days on the island. The sight of the plane circling overhead brought cheers and tears of relief from the group. Within hours, rescue boats arrived, and the passengers and crew were taken aboard, exhausted but alive. As they sailed away, James and Thomas stood together on the deck, watching the island recede into the distance. They had faced one of the greatest challenges of their careers and had emerged not only as heroes but as symbols of hope and perseverance in the face of adversity.